let's just sew whatever. Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. In today's video we are going to be making the Heidi clutch by Swoon Sewing Patterns. This is the small size, which I think is a great size for like a little night out on the town, something like that. So it's got a back zipper back here, which is supposed to look a little more hidden, but when I use a handbag zipper it's a little less hidden. So feel free to make a judgment call there. It's got this really cute accent panel on the front, which is great for using up little scraps of vinyl or leather, something like that. I used leather on the back piece as well because I didn't have enough of my exterior fabric, which, you know, you can absolutely do that. There it looks. There it looks. There is what it looks like when opened. So it's like a snap closure. Should fall into place, but pretty new, so it'll take it a minute. And then when you open it all the way, it's just a big open area, so it can hold a decent amount. You can make the large size into a crossbody bag, a little fold over. It looks super cute. You could even make this size into a little fold over crossbody bag. All you'd want to do is add 2 D-rings to opposite sides, kind of underneath the zipper here, and it would be perfect. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I go over how I interface it in the video, and I guess that's it. I don't know. Oh, here's some awesome shirts that I designed that are available through my website. Just a little self-promotion there. But anyway, enjoy the video. Thanks, guys. Okay, so the first thing we're gonna go over with the Heidi clutch is interfacing. What is the best way to interface it, etc. Since this is a free pattern, I don't feel bad showing you guys the pattern pieces because you can download this at any time. These templates are from topsandbobbins.com. The link is below, as well as a special coupon code that you can use. I don't get any money when you use that code, it just saves you money. So I'm using waterproof canvas to line my bag, so I don't need any interfacing. The link to purchase that is down below as well in the description. So I've got my 2 lining pieces, and then there is a back pocket piece, back pocket panel that requires, oh wait, no, yeah. The pocket panel is 2 linings, so I've got that cut. And then we've got our accent panel. I have cut one of these because my back panel I'm using just straight leather, so I didn't want to add an accent piece on top of that. So you're normally supposed to cut 2 of those. And I don't interface any of those pieces. And then for the back panel A, this is the very front flap of your bag. So I like to use woven interfacing as well as Decoville light. So it just gives it a little extra body. It's gonna make it nice and stiff while also being easy to sew with. And then the back panel B, again, that's gonna be the back of your bag. And I just decided I didn't have much of this fabric left, so I'm using leather. And then we're gonna have a zipper here. Okay, and I don't add any interfacing to that, but if I did, I would just add woven interfacing. And then for the front panel, I added woven fuse and Decoville light. Especially since we've got snaps that we're adding, we want to make sure we've got enough body. So I'm going to go ahead and mark out my snaps right now. So I'm just using this Tandy leather marking pencil, but you could use even a ballpoint pen, that would be fine. So marking those out, and then I'm going to grab my snap. And then I'm going to take the back of my snap and line up the center of your snap with the center of where you've placed it, and then you can mark out those parallel lines. And then we're gonna use a seam ripper to poke those holes. So you don't wanna poke the center hole, just the side slits. And then we can add the female snap portion to the bottom. If there's a protective coating, you wanna peel that off now. Slide that there. Grab your washer and then poke your prongs down. I had a second washer, I thought, but maybe not. And then we'll add the male snap to the top part. And if this is your first time working with snaps and you're like, I'm not sure which one's the male, which is the female, the male has this little nipple on the top. I know that may seem confusing, but then the female part is the one with the actual snap piece, and it has the hole where that goes. So yeah, enjoy that little talk. So we've got our snaps added, and we're gonna add our accent piece. And that just gets laid across the bottom. This is gonna stay in place pretty well because of the leather that I'm using, but if you would like to, you can use double-sided tape or a little glue stick to keep this from shifting, but I think it'll be just fine. I'm gonna use a stitch length of about 4.5 or 5, depending on how long you want that stitch to be. And then you're just gonna sew from 1/8 of an inch all across the edge and then around the bottom to baste it in place too. And I like to do a little back stitch to anchor it in place. And then just kind of hold all your layers as you go. Nice and slow. And then we'll go around the outer edge. This is a leather piece that I purchased from Tandy Leather. It's one of their real thin layers, or leathers, so it's great for accents like this. And then just so you can kind of get an idea of what it's gonna look like, you can fold that over. This is where I like to add a nameplate, either here or on that accent piece, so I'll go ahead and do that now. So the way I do that is I like to just fold the piece in half and make a really quick little crease. And then I'll line up a ruler to be centered over that crease line. And then I lay my nameplate over top and kind of center it out, because all the prongs for these are always going to be a little bit different. Go. And then again, I'm just going to use my seam ripper, make 2 little slits. You want to make sure they're as even as possible, and then make sure it's facing the right direction. Poke that through, and then add your washer to the back. Voila! So now our front panel, which is interfaced with Woven Fuse and Decoville Light, is ready to go. You can see it has a lot of body. It's going to last a long time, and it's going to hold its shape really well. So we can set that aside for now and move on to the rest of the bag. So I'm going to grab my bottom panel. This piece may seem like it's a square, but there is one curved edge, so you want to watch out for that. And you're going to lay that. So here is my front panel face up, and then we're going to lay the back panel face down, so right sides are together, and clip those together. Oh, I'm out of clips. Genius. Okay, so these markings here are stated in the pattern, but I'll say it here as well. There's a 3/4 inch line here. So what I did was I just used my pen and my ruler and I marked out a 3/4 inch line. And then these are 1/2 inch from the outer edges. And that's where you're going to sew really close together, and then you're going to lengthen your stitch, and then you're going to sew really close together. And that's so we can seam rip that open and add our zipper, and it's going to be kind of hidden. It's pretty cool. So I'm going to use a stitch length of about 4. I would do it tighter, but this is leather and I don't want to perforate it. So we're going to back stitch there, we're going to go forward, and then once I get there, I'm going to do 1 little back stitch, come forward, and then I'm going to lengthen it as long as it'll go. So my machine's going to do a 9. Your machine might be 5, and that's fine too. So go all the way down, make sure you're staying on that line. And then again, when we get to this other marking, we're going to switch our stitch length back to what we had it at. So mine would be a 4, yours might be 3.5. You're going to do 1 little back stitch, go forward until the end, and then back stitch 1 more time. So hopefully you can see how far apart those stitches are and how close together these are. And then we can fold this open, and you want to separate this seam. And I'm just finger pressing. I'm not going to be able to use my my iron on this leather, or I will definitely mess it up. So I'm just pressing it out gently. And then the pattern suggests a 9-inch zipper, but I couldn't find any 9-inch zippers, so I'm just going to use this 8-inch zipper, and it should fit just fine. I'm not worried about it. And I'm using a handbag zipper. You can use an all-purpose zipper if you'd like a more hidden zipper, but I get frustrated with handbag zippers, or with all-purpose zippers, I should say. So before I cut this open, I'm going to top stitch on the outside. Just going to go really close. I'm holding the zipper with my fingers. You can use basting tape if you'd like, but since it's a nice wide zipper, I can pretty much just kind of hold it in place and know that it's going to be all right. Watch me eat my words. I'm using a stitch length of 4 still, and you want to make sure that you're not stitching through the teeth of the zipper. So I'm just going to go all the way down, back stitch, and it's looking pretty good so far. I got a little messed up, but I think it's going to be fine. You can see here it shifted a bit, but like I said, I think it's going to be fine. If you want to, at this point, you can seam rip this open, and you're just going to look for those really long stitches, and that's where you'll start. Make sure you don't get your zipper. And then once you do one, the next ones should be pretty easy to just kind of pull apart with your fingers. And you can snip them as you go if you want. I'm always afraid of using that seam ripper, that I'm gonna poke through something I shouldn't poke through. See, as you seam rip, kind of comes a little easier. And you want to make sure that you pull out all of those little threads, otherwise they'll get caught in your zipper and you'll have trouble zipping it up. And that is no fun. pulling it apart from the other side. Seems to be working pretty well. There we go. Now I can grab this string too. Can't get to it from that side, but there we go. Then I can press this down one more time, and then I should be able to see my zipper. Give it a little pull to make sure you can unzip it. It's pretty good. If you want to use a zipper that's longer, you can totally do that too. Just make sure that you watch out for that zipper pull. All right, so now I'm gonna stitch along the other side. My zipper tape is in place. Doesn't seem like anything's gonna get messed up. So there you have your zipper in place. And now we've got plenty of seam allowance here. We can add the top of our lining and the bottom of our lining. So this part, the first time I did it, was pretty cool. You're just gonna line it up with the top flap here and stitch all those together. And then you want to make sure that you press this open, and then you'll do it again with the bottom. So those lining pieces are just going on opposite sides of that zipper and that seam that we left. And then we can press those down to the bottom. And you're gonna have some excess hanging over the sides. That is totally what you want. And we can baste it into place. And then we'll trim off all this excess. We don't need it, we don't want it, goodbye. And then you can give it a test, open it up just to make sure that you've caught all of your fabric. And then I like to sew it, or not sew it, but unzip it about halfway so that your zipper doesn't end up in either seam allowance. And now we can go ahead and focus on adding the zipper. I'm using a metal zipper. Normally I would recommend a nylon zipper, but I don't have any laying around. It's kind of a bummer. And we're just gonna keep in mind how we want the zipper when it's shut. So I want the zipper to be kind of like this. So we're gonna lay it face down with the zipper pull facing that direction. And I'm going to fold my zipper in half, and I'm gonna make two tiny, tiny little center snips on that zipper tape. Two tiny, tiny snips. And then I'm gonna fold this piece here in half. And this is just gonna help me make sure that everything is nice and centered. And then I'm gonna do it again to this panel too. Just a tiny little snip, nothing too big. Okay, and now we're ready to add our zipper. So again, I'm working with this back panel first, lining up the center snips, and I'm gonna add a clip. And then you're gonna just kind of slowly curve your zipper along that seam. And these ends of your zipper, you're gonna fold down at a 90-degree angle. Clip it in place. And then again, you're gonna fold that down at a 90-degree angle. It's gonna sit in place like that. Put that into place. Sewing at about 1/8 of an inch from the edge. And just make sure the edge of your zipper lines up with the edge of your fabric. You wanna make sure those curves mimic each other. I am using a handbag zipper for this part as well. It's a number 5. If you're not familiar with zipper tape, there's number 3, which is an all-purpose zipper. It's got a really small zipper pull. And then there's number 5, which is a lot wider of a zipper tape, and it has a larger zipper pull on average, usually. So if you wanted to add a zipper pocket to the lining of this bag, you could do that by following the directions of any other zipper pocket, really. But we're just gonna follow the directions like it says. And I'm gonna clip the lining to this piece and put my clips on from the opposite direction so that when I flip it over, see right now they're backwards, but when you flip it over, they're right side up. Because we're gonna follow this stitch line, our basting stitch line, and we're gonna come in 1/8 of an inch from that or 1/4 of an inch from the outer edge. Just watch out for that zipper pull. And then you can kind of feel the teeth of your zipper with your fingers through the fabric. You want to make sure that you're not sewing through them. Okay. So now if you need to, you can trim this down, or you can add just a quick, careful little snips into that curve so that when you iron it open, it sits nicely. And you want to make sure you're not cutting through your stitches. You just want to kind of score the fabric a little bit. And then we're going to turn it. And I'm going to press it from the lining side very carefully. I'm going to use a lot of steam. Oh, well, not if you're using leather, don't use any steam. If you're using regular fabrics and vinyl, you should be fine to use steam. But if you use steam with leather, it's gonna mess it up. Okay, and then we're ready to top stitch. And the way I like to top stitch this is I just go from one end of the zipper, so where the zipper starts and stops, to the other, not within the seam allowance, or the side panel, I should say. So like 1/2 an inch from the outer edge. You're just gonna backstitch, 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 and go forward, following the edge nice and close. Remember, this is the front, this is what's gonna show when it's closed, and you wanna make it look nice. And now our zipper is ending, so I'm gonna stop and backstitch and backstitch and backstitch. Pull this off. Trim it nice and carefully. Okay. So this is what it's looking like. It's looking pretty good. I'm not mad. My lining's a little messed up, but that's okay because we're gonna use a longer seam allowance in the lining anyway. It's not the end of the world. So next you want to grab your other exterior panel and lay your exterior panel face down on top of that. We're going to line up our center snips. And I do that by kind of gently pulling them apart, centering it up. Add a clip. Add another clip. And then fold that zipper tape up at a 90-degree angle. I guess it's technically a 45-degree angle. And then again, you just want to make sure that your zipper tape mimics that curve of the bag. Make sure your zipper pull is out of the way. bring it to the machine and stitch about 1/8 of an inch from the outer edge. And if you want to, you can fold your lining panel to find that center as well. Add a little snip and then line that up there as well. And we're going to clip from the other side. I'm just repeating all the steps from the other time we sewed the zipper, and I'm just very carefully, these are kind of old scissors. I find that it's easier to do this with old scissors because your hand kind of can feel when the height changes, so when it hits that thread it knows to stop. Maybe I'm just weird. So then we're gonna push this up and iron it from the lining side again. We're gonna press it, and you can actually unzip it this time so that it's a little easier to get to. And again, I'm just steaming it with my iron very carefully on the lining side. I'm using a metal zipper, which again, I don't normally like to do, but if you are using a metal zipper, make sure that you don't touch the teeth after you iron it. Okay, so from the right side up, again, I'm starting where that zipper ends, adding a few back stitches, making sure I pull my zipper out nice. Watch out for that zipper pull. And now my zipper is ending, so I'm just gonna back stitch, back stitch, back stitch. And now with all the ends of my threads, you could use your thread zap if you wanted, but I'm just gonna take my lighter really quick to the ends of it and make sure that it doesn't fray. That's what's nice about the waterproof canvas too, is it's kind of flame retardant. All right, so now we're gonna zip it up about halfway, and we're gonna bring the lining sides together and pull the exterior sides together. And carefully match it up at the top. Make sure your zipper panel looks nice, and clip it. And then again, line up the bottom. If you added accent panels to both sides, you would also want to be very careful that you lined those up, but I did not, so I don't have to really worry about that. There's no shame in having tons of clips to hold it together. It's a lot of fabric, you don't want to mess it up. And then my lining panels. So this pattern calls for leaving the side over here open, but I'm just gonna leave the bottom open because I can add a name tag there and it's just a little easier to birth for me. but feel free to follow the pattern directions. Also, if you wanted to add a wristlet strap D-ring, this would be the time to do it. Just use the pattern piece and line up that marking and make sure it's within the seam allowance. I'm just gonna add the wristlet strap. These are pre-made wristlet straps from my website. I'm just gonna add that to the zipper because it's long enough and I don't feel like dealing with adding the D-ring. Not that there's any issue, but yeah. So we're gonna use a slightly wider seam allowance in the lining. So instead of 1/2 inch, it's gonna be like 5/8 of an inch, I think, or is it 3/8? No, 3/8 is smaller. So we're gonna use about just a little over 1/2 inch. We don't need to get particular. I'm gonna use a stitch length of 4, and we're gonna be about 1.5 inches from the outer edge, and just go around. And then as we get closer to the top zipper, you want to kind of feel where it starts and stops because you don't want to sew through your metal teeth or your zipper teeth in general. We're just going to go right up next to it. And then kind of switch your mindset to that 1/2 inch seam allowance. I like to backstitch over the accent panel. And just follow that curve. And then again, I'm just kind of feeling where my zipper starts. And then we're going to adjust to that wider seam allowance. So I left a pretty decent sized birthing hole because it's going to be pretty thick, and we're going to just trim all the excess that we've sewn through. You don't want to trim where you haven't sewn, or you're not going to be able to sew it shut very easily unless you like whip stitch it by hand or something, if you're into torturing yourself. I'm just trimming all of my excess seam allowance, especially in those corners. It's going to be nice and thick with that leather. Probably want to use better scissors than this. If you used a zipper that's longer for your hidden zipper, you're going to want to trim that out as well. Okay. And then if there are any leather scraps that are big enough, you can kind of pull it apart and use it as a zipper pull later. I've been known to do that, but I won't at this time. All right, so now we're ready to birth it. We're gonna unzip the zipper all the way, very carefully, and then pull from the very bottom first. Grab that through. What's nice about using the Decoville is it's not going to hold the wrinkles very well, so that's always really nice. They're easy to steam out as long as it's interfaced properly. So you want to push out right here. That can get kind of bulky. You want to push out that zipper. Carefully use your thumb or some kind of turning item, whatever works for you. Okay, so now I'm working on pushing out those corners. Sometimes I'll use a dull pair of scissors to get that corner out all the way. I might have to do that now. Luckily, I can trust that this leather is pretty thick. Shouldn't have any issues busting through it or anything. But so far, it's looking really, really cute. Yeah, so I'm just gonna gently use a pair of scissors in that corner. You wanna kind of feel it underneath the layers, and then I just kind of use my body to push against the scissors and just really slowly, carefully push out that corner. You don't want to go too far, but you can see that I was able to get that turned out with minimal effort. So with this corner, I'm going to kind of push it back in and then use my scissors up against that seam very, very carefully. You don't want to push too fast, too hard, or you're going to poke through something and break it. If you guys know of a better tool to use for this, feel free to comment down below. But yeah, there we go. I think that's as far out as it's gonna get. So you can carefully press all this in place nicely. It's looking nice. Feel free to zip this back up. And now we're gonna sew this closed. And just tuck all that excess back in, that excess seam allowance. Make sure it sits nice. Poke out that corner if you need to. And I'm just gonna sew it closed. And then I like to add a little name tag as well. And then we can put that lining inside. And because we used a smaller seam allowance on the lining than the exterior, it should fit in place really nicely. It shouldn't be a lot of excess lining bunching up inside. We can zip it closed. Those metal zippers are tough. And then snap it shut and kind of press it with your hands. But there you have your Heidi wristlet all finished. I love this pattern. I think it would be really cool if you even wanted to add like 2 snaps, one here, one here, one here, one here, and then it would close and it wouldn't lift as much. But if you used Decoville Light, that's why it's lifting up so much, just because it's such a nice thick interfacing that it's gonna have that kind of look, but over time it'll soften, so that's a good thing. But there's the back, and there's our front. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more videos like this in the future, be sure to subscribe. And don't forget to check out my other videos. Bye, thanks.